I give you the Bourke.
Oh, good morning. As Paul said, my name is David Bourke, and I'm with Malachy Walsh and Partners here in Limerick. Just very briefly, I'll just tell you a little bit about Malachy Walsh's if you're not familiar with us. We were established 51 years ago. We currently have slightly over 150 staff spread across 4 offices. The most local one is here in Limerick, where we have 10 staff. We provide services: civil, structural, mechanical, electrical, environmental. And there's just some of our clients, obviously I picked the ones you'd be more familiar with, but we have many, many more, some of which I was told not to discuss because we've signed NDAs and whatnot. But a little bit about myself: as Paul said, I graduated from LIT. I also graduated from GMIT, where most recently I achieved a higher diploma in engineering in BIM. I'll go into that in a little bit more detail in a little while. I have over 15 years of experience as an engineering technician, both in Ireland, abroad, companies like Arup and PM and a few more. Currently I'm the senior CAD BIM technician here in Limerick in the civil structural disciplines, and a member of Engineers Ireland. So a little bit about our setup within Malachy Walsh's. Wesley Law is our BIM manager. He has spoken at a number of these events, usually about Páirc Uí Chaoimh. And we have Jerry Denny. He's our CAD manager. Both those gentlemen are based in Cork, and they're responsible for developing our CAD and BIM standards, and then feeding that down into the senior technicians across our 4 offices. We found obviously an integral part of implementing BIM within your organisation is CPD. So we have 2 approaches to that. We have in-house, which has taken the form of mostly lunchtime talks on items such as drawing numbering, which is something I've been trying to hammer home quite a bit, because it seems to be something that people can't get their head around, that their drawing number isn't the last 4 digits of what's written on your drawing. And we've done quite a few Revit tutorials at lunchtime, which are broadcast across the 4 offices. But most of our CPD is done externally through LIT in the courses that Paul mentioned. I've completed the level 6 in Revit architecture. We currently have one of our M&E engineers doing the Revit MEP course, and as I said, I graduated from GMIT 2 years ago now in the level 8 in engineering and BIM. The 4 modules I've highlighted are the 4 that I did. The green ones are the 4 I completed, and thankfully the red one I managed to get a exemption on due to having previously completed the course in LIT, and also I did my dissertation on BIM in LIT 8 years ago now, which was handy because the final module was 50% of the marks. They've all been invaluable, those courses. They've been fantastic. We've also had Diatech come into us a number of times for training with Civil 3D, with vehicle tracking. I'll do a little more on that in a little while. Also, again, very valuable exercises. A number of the projects we have done. Páirc Uí Chaoimh obviously is the big one at the moment, because it recently won Engineers Ireland Project of the Year. This was all done out of our Cork office, and we were civil, structural and M&E consultants on it, and it was very successful. It was one of the first large-scale BIM projects that Malachy Walsh's took on, so there was quite a learning curve on it, because obviously stadiums like this don't get built every day, so it had its own inherent challenges. Then adding BIM into the mix was just another level to get over, but I think it was very, very successful. More locally now, here are some of the jobs we've done in Limerick. This is the Advanced Technologies building in Shannon, which will be completed hopefully in the next number of weeks. This was our first foray into BIM in Limerick, and it's going to be part of Jaguar Land Rover's Research and Development Centre for their autonomous and their electronic vehicles. They're taking over 3 blocks in Shannon, and this will actually be the workshops and labs, and there's a small office there towards the front. as you can see there, that's the architectural model that we were sent from Ready Architecture and Urbanism in Kilkenny. From that, we developed our structural model. As you can see, steel frame for the warehouse, RC construction, and some steel frame on the roof for the offices. And we also produced an M&E model, which is kind of difficult to see there, but it's quite a good model. And obviously we learned a lot on that, it being our first job. And I'll go into some of the lessons we learned towards the end of the presentation. Our second foray into BIM was the Shannon Business Up, which is directly across the road from the Advanced Technologies building, and it's just a coffee shop. Starbucks are going to taking that over now in a couple of weeks, and as our knowledge of BIM and Revit in particular advanced, we tried to make the most of the functionality, and we started to produce some of our details in 3D, which we found very useful, the contractors found very useful, and instead of taking a number of sections across an element, we found one 3D view more than did the job. Excuse me. Moving on. Huge amount of our work is in wind farms. The 4 I've listed there are 4 we've recently completed or are near completion in the Limerick office. The photo is Slieve Callan in County Clare. I'll give you some sort of idea of the scale. You can just about see a car there at the bottom. So it's a 70-metre high turbine and 38-metre blades, I think. We use Civil 3D to do an awful lot of work on the wind farms. All our access roads are done in Civil 3D. All our hard stands, which is where your crane and your delivery vehicles set up. We obviously use Civil 3D to cut and fill volumes, our vertical alignment, horizontal alignments, and our swept path analysis through the vehicle tracking. Now I'm going to try. This may not play. This is some 3D vehicle tracking that our lads in 3D did. Yeah, a second now. No. Sorry about this. No, it's the N21 roundabout in Newcastle West. Turbine blades were being delivered between Foynesport and the Knockdinan wind farm in Kerry. So this was all done in Civil 3D. Our engineers in the Tralee office modelled up the truck fully loaded with the blade and used the vehicle tracking functionality in Civil 3D to do a 3D model of the truck passing over the roundabout. Obviously we need to take into consideration, do signposts need to be moved, do roads need to be temporarily widened, there's a path need to be created across the yeah, it can be hairy, and obviously we'll do this, and this is all well and good, but there's always a trial run done with a mock-up of the blade, and that generally throws up more than its fair share of challenges. Oh, sorry, just go back to the presentation. We also use Infraworks quite a bit on our wind farm jobs. That is Cordal Wind Farm. It's very useful for the concept and to as a tool to engage with, different stakeholders who maybe wouldn't have the technical knowledge to just throw a drawing in front of them. And obviously wind farms can be quite sensitive in terms of visual impact and local opposition, so we found Infraworks is great to be able to throw an image like that in front of a room and say this is what ultimately it's going to look like. And moving on, we've started recently coming to produce a lot of 3D renders and 3D models for our submissions. Again, when you're trying to win jobs, very often you're trying to win them from people who aren't technical people, and we found these 3D renders have been very useful. This is for Visitor Centre for Oninny Wind Farm in County Mayo. We're doing this in conjunction with Admin Construction. And just a bit of feedback we got from Admin was that they were incredibly happy with this, and they'd be very inclined to come back to us for any of their 3D modelling needs. That's the external. That's a coffee shop. No, we kept it very basic. We didn't go into adding furniture and whatnot, just down to time. We also were doing the operations building on that job. And another submission we're in the process of doing, which we're hoping to win, is the Damar Al Jamal wind farm in Saudi Arabia. This is the first large-scale wind farm in Saudi Arabia, so it's a pretty major project to win. It's approximately 500 million euro. A very competitive submission process. There's about 20 teams submitting, so we're waiting to hear on this. So obviously there are 102 turbines. There's a visitor centre, which you can see there. The visitor centre towards the front. We have an operations building just behind it, and then there's staff accommodation. It's quite a remote location. One of our technicians here in Limerick produced these renders through Revit and Infraworks, and then tidied them up using V-Ray, I believe. And just one internal view. Something we've started using on our drawings recently is QR codes. Very handy way to add an additional layer of information to your drawings. You can see it there to the right hand side of the drawing. On that, I believe we used it as a link to panoramic views on the Autodesk Render website. I've also used it to as a link to Google Maps. An awful lot of our sites, being wind farms, they're very remote, very hard to find. So it's quite simple. Just scan it with your iPhone, your iPad, whatever. It'll bring you straight to anything from Google Maps locations, as I say, panoramic views, more renders, Dropbox locations, several other uses for that. It's very handy. And we're also starting to look into virtual reality. We've not done much lately on this. We're trying to source at the moment someone to provide branded VR cardboards like the Google cardboard they're shown. They're quite cheap, and you can send them out with a submission and send a link to panoramic views, 3D views, whatnot. We'll see how that goes. We've also recently invested in a drone. So we're trying at the moment, we're testing it out, seeing what uses we can make of the drone. This is a Cordal wind farm. This was actually taken by one of the members of Louis Keaton's towards the end of the job. He used his own drone to assess the progress of the site. We've heard anecdotally a number of contractors are engaged in this now, that they will use a drone to take either pictures or videos and use those as a progress report to clients, because it's a nice tool to show this is what's been done, not just a report with bullet points saying what's done. Yeah, that video is playing. This is the Ross Bay cliff stabilisation job in Kerry. You'll see now in a second when the drone pans around, a very inaccessible site. So what we're hoping to do on jobs like this is use the drone to assess sites that maybe aren't quite so easy to access. This was one of our engineers in Tralee, Cormac, just gone out testing it. He came very close to losing the drone in the first couple of days because the drones have a couple of limitations, one mainly being weather conditions and wind, and Cormac lives near the coast in Tralee, and it very nearly got ditched into the sea. But as you can see, like that, trying to assess the soil nailing or whatever that's going on there, very difficult. A drone will make your life an awful lot easier. The other limitation we have is that we have a number of jobs in close proximity to Shannon Airport. That drone won't take off within 5 kilometres of Shannon Airport, or any airport. It's quite, you can over time apply to fly within the zone, but you have to have a certain number of hours flight time built up. And we're trying to see how we can integrate the drone footage and drone photos with our BIM capabilities. And this is an image of Bourke, and this is the finished job. So it's a nice little tool to show how a design progresses. From a design point of view, not terribly useful. From a marketing point of view, quite good. I'm just going to finish now on a couple of points that we've learned. It's a fairly obvious one, the first one. The better quality of information you get, the better your end result. We're often asked to produce data towards the end of a job on the wind farms, as-built surveys, as-built drawings and whatnot. And unfortunately, the as-built information that comes to us can be very, very sketchy, and it can lead to some heated conversations with contractors about the quality of the as-builts. An issue we've come across quite a bit, and I'm quite aware that it happens within Malachy Watches, and it happens with other design team members we've dealt with, especially with detailing. A lovely Revit model is produced. It comes to the detail and nitty-gritty of the job. The Revit model goes out the window because the resources aren't available, and details and sections are produced in CAD. And there's a number of reasons that it will cause problems. And it seems to be usually down that the resource that's available isn't Revit capable. And we've had it on a job where the details didn't match the model. We were clashing our architectural, structural M&E models against each other, and elements weren't in the model that would have caused the clash. And it took a bit of time to resolve. And thankfully, it didn't lead to any issues on site, but I firmly believe if you're going to do a job in Revit, do it completely in Revit or Civil 3D or whatever package you're using. Don't just go running back to CAD every time you run into a problem. One advantage we've used, and our engineers inside in Limerick here found this fantastic. We can generate sections and views of elements of the building very, very easily. Saves an awful lot of time. Also, we might get a phone call from site. Can you tell us what's going on here? You can be back to within 10 minutes with a fairly basic section of a section part of the building. And the final thing, we've made a decision in Limerick recently that lonely BIM is okay. If you're the only design team member working in BIM, that's fine. Plough ahead, don't be waiting for other people to spur you into action. And we kind of decided recently anything we can do in BIM we're going to do, and it's been working quite well for us so far. So that's my lot. Thanks very much.
Thank you.